Okay, so I'm going to go through the process again here of loading the louver blade in as per the notes on page 12 and 13. So first of all, you start with using the exterior louver rectangular family. And now what we need to do is insert the louver blade. So from the session 5 folder, you can drag and drop the louver blade into Revit, which opens up the louver blade family. So inside this family we have parameters that control the length of the blade and its width. If you look at it, this is what the blade looks like. It's kind of got a bit of an airfoil shape to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to load this blade into our frame family. So here it is here. So we're looking at step 2. Now we're on to step 3. Actually, the blade will be able to be placed inside the exterior louver family. Place it so that its center is just off the center, like you can see on my screen here. So there's the louver blade. Now we're going to use the Align tool, and we're going to pick the center reference plane for the frame, and we are going to then pick the center of the louver blade, which you can see is turning blue underneath my cursor. Once that's done, we're going to lock it into place. Now, this frame family has all of the parameters that are needed to make this whole family work. So when we go and look in the family types dialog box here, we have parameters for the width and height for the frame. And we have parameters that control the width of the frame, the depth of the frame, and how much from the outside face of the wall that the frame is set back. So this has already been built into this family. Now there are also parameters that are meant to control the length of these nested blades. And so here we take the opening width, which defines the overall outer width of the frame, and subtracts 2 frame widths to arrive at the width of the blade. So all of these other properties are built in here, and we'll be talking more about the use of formulas inside families. So continuing on with the instructions here, we're on to step 5 on page 12. So we're using the dimension command, and we're dimensioning from the top reference plane to the edge of this newly placed louver blade, finding some white space and placing the dimension, and hitting escape twice so that we can come back and select that dimension and associate it with the blade clear from end parameter, which will be at the drop-down menu at the top of the screen. Now, I might have done this backwards because I think we were supposed to do it at the top, or from the bottom rather. Doesn't matter, it'll work either direction that you want. So I'm going to click the blade, and the notes say to array it, and just make the second copy again slightly off center like you see here. Back to the align command and picking the center of the frame, and then picking the center of the blade. Again, look for that blue line to indicate the center of the blade. Second click of the array command and lock this one as well. Now we're going to go back and grab the dimension command. The dimension, again, make sure you choose the reference plane and not just the edge of geometry. The reason that you want to make sure that you choose the reference plane first is that it provides, if you will, a sturdier foundation, a more solid location for the start of the dimension. So there's our first click for the dimension, and our second click is on the bottom edge of this louver blade. Again, find some white space, place it, hit escape twice to get out of the dimension command, and go back and pick the dimension that's been placed. And this one will also be associated with the blade clear from end. So we've got our 2 blades placed at the top and bottom of our louver frame. Now, there is inside the the hosting family here, our louver frame family, there is a special kind of parameter here. It's called an integer parameter. Now, in the notes, it talks about that when you create a new parameter inside a family, so the default parameter that Revit creates is a length parameter, but there is another parameter that you can create which is an integer. So of course integers are discrete whole numbers, and of course something like an array can only be discrete numbers in values of 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So when you are making an array in a family, you can make it parametric, but that array formula, or that array parameter, will be an integer, and we'll see that in a moment. So here's our array family, and as you folks know, in a project you can click on the number of an array and you can increase the number of objects in that array, but this family already calculates the number of blades needed to fill in the opening there. So there's a formula already built into this family here, which is an integer parameter which calculates the number of blades needed. So now what we're going to do is, in the plan view, we're going to pick one of the members of the array, and to make an array parametric, you don't click on the number, you click on the connector between the members of the array, and that allows you now to make this array parametric. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go up to the label drop down and choose the parameter that's already built into the family, and that will add the number of blades that are required. So what you should see now in 3D when you're looking at this thing is you should see the correct number of blades, and if your blades aren't starting and stopping properly, then you might be in a bit of trouble. Now I just realized here, I'm just going to go back a few steps. I'm actually going to go back and start with the array command all over again, because I realized that before I started the array, I need to ensure that the array is a last type array. So when you're making that array in the, let's see here, step 7 on page 12, you need to make sure that it is a last type array. So I apologize for not making that, pointing that out a few minutes ago when we first started this process. So it's going to be a last type array. I'm going to go through that process again here pretty quickly. Aligning the second member of the array with the center reference plane, putting in the dimension from the bottom here to our arrayed blade, and giving that dimension the blade clear from end parameter, and now selecting on that either member of the array that's been newly created, clicking the little staple shaped connector between the two of them, and adding the array parameter. Okay, so now we've got our array created. We've got our dimensions here to make sure that the first and last member of the arrayed blade is at the right location. And now we're going to go back into the left elevation view here and get these blades into the right location. So right now they're kind of floating above our frame. So we're going to use the align command again and pick the reference plane here at the bottom of our frame for the louver frame. That's our first click. And now we hover our cursor over the leftmost blade here, and there's a reference plane inside this family at this location, but Revit's not showing it to us straight away. So what we need to do is hover and then hit the tab key 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. And now left click, and it brings that blade down. Need to do the same thing at the other end. So again, we want to make sure that we're clicking on the reference plane first. And now the second click, before we click, we have to hover over the bottom of the rightmost blade, hit the tab key 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and there's the second blade locked and arrayed into place. Now let's watch and see how this how this family behaves when we change the dimensional values of the family. So I'm going into family types here. I'm going to make the width 4 feet wide, and I'm going to make the height 3'6", and we're just going to confirm that Revit increases the number of blades and makes the blades wider as the opening has gotten wider. Oh, bit of a problem here. So now what we have to do, and I believe I skipped this step, so it's good that we saw this through to the end. I forgot to, and I think this is in step 6. So we need to go into the specialty equipment folder, expand until we find the louver blade, and then expand until we see the child entry here and double click it. And so now what we need to do is to connect this blade family with the linking parameters that I already created in the frame. So here, under width, hit the little gray button on the right hand side and choose blade width. Grab the curve radius parameter, a little gray button, blade curve radius. Blade XY, same thing here, find the blade XY that's in the host. And I've also got a blade material family as well, so that when we use the use this family in a project, we can control the material appearance of those nested blades as well. So there we go. So now our blades are stretching themselves appropriately. Now, if you make the blades smaller, so that's the blade XY parameter, if you make them so they're only 2 inches, Revit increases the number of blades so that you'll never see a gap when you're looking at the blades from outside. So even if you make the blades smaller, so they have a smaller XY length, Revit simply increases or decreases the number of blades to suit. So here if I make it up to 4 inches, there you go, and Revit keeps the blades so they're just overlapping, and so they do provide an obscuring capability when they're seen from outside. Now, if we want to see how this is going to look in the context of a project, we'll just start up a new project here. And I'll draw a wall across the screen. So once this wall is here, I'm going to load this louver into my project. And now we can see it in our project. So there's our louver blade. So you can see it looks like the real deal. There's our blades. So you folks can feel free to use this in your project. So sorry we didn't get this right the first time around, but hopefully you folks will be able to figure this out now that you can review the video on YouTube. And we'll see you folks next week. If you have any questions, we can go over it next week when you folks return to class.